all of us, like when we started clubbing, Tito had a lot of clothes. And so Agato and myself would go over to Tito's house and we'd get dressed to go to the nightclub. And if any of us look really, what we call it, whack at the time, which is the saying, you look whacked, man, then, or that's whack, was the saying, then, we'd look at each other and go, man, look at your hair. Your hair looks fucked up. So the thing is, today they call that bullying. Back then, it was helping to motivate you to change, to fit in, to become a better dresser, for us to criticize each other, to look at each other. Women may think only girls sit around and get dressed together, but guys, we sat around trying to figure out how we're gonna dress so we can look good to impress the ladies. Okay, and so, all of us, because Tito had so many clothes, we all wore his damn clothes. It's really kind of cool. And so when it came to the car situation, now I had a ride and I was able to drive out to see my new girlfriend out there and experienced a lot. And one of the things, just by being in that environment and seeing a professional family, essentially, this is sort of the way, the aspiration of what a family could look like when there's a mom and dad and they're well accomplished. Not to say that there aren't different look of success in the African American community, but it was certainly one of the benchmarks to aspire to be. And one of the things, I think her father, he liked me because I remember him driving all the way out to Boston to meet my mom. He never met her. I wasn't home that day. I think we had all left. But just the fact that maybe he was curious to go, who the hell is this kid? But he liked me well enough. He wasn't going to let me, if I kissed his daughter once in front of him and he didn't like it too much and said something to me. So it's not like he was like, go on with my daughter. But he was respectable. And, they'd take us to the movies, they'd drop us off at dinner because mom was the chaperone, or sometime our brother would be the chaperone. And so, it was really just a very, very impactful experience as to something that I can aspire to do. And I remember after that I started working out more. And I remember one day, again, my personality at this point. Anytime there's something that I'm interested in doing, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to work out for 5 hours in the gym. And so, again, I wouldn't work out quite for 5 hours lifting weights, but you'd go into the gym and, I'd start following along whatever the other kids were doing. And I started off bench pressing. At the time, we didn't work on legs. It was more upper body that we worked on, work on your arm, work on your chest, work on your back. We didn't work on shoulders either for several years until my friend Joe pointed out that, we should work on our shoulders too. Because eventually we started laughing at each other. We would go back, no chest, no leg. In other words, you didn't work on your legs. You have skinny legs. You don't work on your chest, etc. You're just going to look not in symmetry, so to speak. Your symmetry is going to look wrong. So eventually we started to work out and having a much more balanced physique. But I remember at the time, in the very, very early stages, I'd work my way up, day after day, 5 days a week, coming into the gym. And I'd finally got up to 135-pound bench press. And I was so proud. 135. Now, 135, for those who don't know, is the big 45-pound bar and then a 45-pound plate. Those are the big plates on each side. Each of those are 45 pounds. And so I was so excited. I was like, 135 pounds. I got the 45 pounds up. And I remember this one kid walked into the gym, and it was an African-American kid, and he was a really cool kid, and he had a lot of friends. And by the way, one of the things you have to keep in mind is that I was a little bit of an outsider because some of the kids, even though I had a lot of friends, there's some groups that you can't be a part of every clique. And so this kid had grew up in the neighborhood, and so he had his own friends, and so he was cool among his friends. He had earned his respect and his props among his friends. And so when he came in there, he was a pretty cool kid, and he looked at me, and he was bigger than I was, because when I I think by the time I finished breakdancing, I was 135 pounds. So I was not some sort of big kid, but I was lean and ripped at that point from dancing. But this, and so this kid came in there, and you can tell he had a little bit more size on him, and he came in and he slapped on the 45 pounds on each side, and then he put on 25 pounds on each side. So he was basically doing 175. And then he bench pressed it once, and then he looked at me and he just laughed to his friends, and they walked out of there. And that didn't go over well with me. And I was a little pissed off because, I'm embarrassed. It's his job to, take a swipe at me because, hey, it's essentially, it's sort of like it's a pecking order. It's you see in the Serengeti, they're different alpha males, and he's an alpha, and I want to be an alpha. I'm an alpha in my own circle, but at the same token, hey, that wasn't going his way. So that didn't go over well. So for the next several months, I trained and trained and trained. And of course, you can see me over time training until one day, this is much later in the future, I got to, I think I was a junior in high school by then. I bench pressed 3 45-pound plates on each side. That's 315 pounds. And oh my God, that's, when I bench pressed 315 pounds, I felt like I was about 148 pounds at the time. I felt like I was the strongest, biggest guy in the world. I took my shirt off and I walked down Commonwealth Avenue, shirtless, walking down the street, still skinny legs, and walking down Commonwealth Avenue. And, I just felt so big and strong, at the time. And honestly, at 148 pounds, I was ripped. I think I started working on my legs, but they were kind of lagging behind a little bit, so it wasn't terrible, but it certainly, I was still wearing long pants. And the funny thing about it is, a lot of the guys didn't wear shorts because we're kind of concerned about our skinny legs. So rather than actually working on your damn skinny legs, we decided, hey, we're just going to wear long pants to cover it up, okay? And so for the longest time, I didn't work legs that much, so I had skinny legs, but I really had a really chiseled, strong upper body. And so that's what I did. I walked down Commonwealth Avenue and, showing off to my friends, which they thought it was pretty cool. I remember one day that this guy came into the gym, and at that point I'd started to, kind of squat more and doing other, started working on my legs, etc. And this older guy came in there, and he was kind of weird. He would come in there, and it's an older white guy that was he'd come in, and he'd have this cardboard box with him. I think all the guys gonna remember this weird guy that would come in with a cardboard box, and he'd always have oranges in there, like a few oranges in there that he would bring in there, and he would come into the gym and he would work out. He had a big pot belly, but he'd come into the gym to work out. And one day, he said, you're a strong kid. You should compete. And I was like, compete? I didn't think I was that strong. And he's like, no, I think you should compete. And so, even though he was a little weird, I thought, I'll give it a roll. So actually, I started competing in bench press, and I remember going to a bench press competition meet, and after going through it, I was hooked. I want to add in a couple of things, by the way. At some point, once I started working out, there's another kid that I met, Mauricio. Mauricio was an Hispanic kid who we just hit it off together. We were in the gym. He was ripped. He was strong, and Mauricio was fierce. He was, and we just hung out together. We worked out together. We hung out afterwards together. And for people, we were the best of friends for the longest time. I think we had a lot in common. We came from a sort of an immigrant family, and I think he had a troubled home at one point. And so I think he was just angry. And so Mauricio would get in fights all the time. I mean, it was just, and even I remember one day, finally, later on, down the road at the boys club, he and I went outside, and he was a good fighter. The boy could fight. Okay, so it wasn't a pushover. And so, we went out there, we looked at each other in the eye, about to get in a fight, because that's what boys do. We get in fights with each other, then we become friends. But at that point, we kind of looked at each other, and we really didn't want to fight each other. And besides, it wouldn't have ended well, because both of us at that point could fight, and we probably would have beaten the living shit out of each other. So we just decided, not a good idea. So we just continued our friendship. And I remember this one moment that he and I and a couple of other young kids, we would always, after we do our workout at the boys club, we would go down to the Burger King. There was a Burger King right down the street. And we'd get there and we would order a Whopper with double Whopper with cheese, large fries, chocolate shake, and an onion ring, or a Pepsi. And so, that's what we'd eat. So you'd eat all this caloric stuff. You may say it's not healthy for you, but here's what I'll tell you. Back then, when you're walking everywhere and you're running all over the place and you're working out and you're young, your metabolism is raging fast. Trust me, you can't gain weight that easily because you're just too active. And so we'd go down there and wolf down double Whopper with cheese, large fries, chocolate shake, onion ring, and a Pepsi, and boom, every day we'd go down there and do it after we finished working out. And then I remember one day in particular that Mauricio we were on our way down there, and there was probably about maybe a couple other kids there, and Mauricio was just goofing off, and he was chasing after one of the kids. So he was up sort of on a higher level up there. It's like you're walking down the street, and there's a wall there. So he was walking on the wall, and then he was chasing after one of the kids, and they were goofing off. And then this guy in this car pulled up, and he was the windows were a little bit tinted, and he pulled up right next to me, and he was a really weird guy. And he goes, "Hey, come here." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Come here." And I was like, I said, "What do you want?" And he was an older guy, like, he looked like he was in his 40s. And I said, "What do you want?" He goes, "Get your friend to come over there." I go, "What?" He goes, "I want to suck him off." And I go, "What?" I go, "Get the fuck out of here, motherfucker." And I started screaming, and he drove away. What's interesting about that story is that of all the kids in the neighborhood, I don't know if I've ever even told Mauricio this story, but of all the kids in that neighborhood, the impish part of my brain said, you probably should. If he had ever picked up Mauricio and threw him in that car, he'd be like a fucking Tasmanian devil in that car. Mauricio was like my brother Wayne, fearless, and would fuck that, I guarantee you, because this was not like we were 15. Mauricio was, I think we were pushing 17, and we were strong, and we were fit, and unless this guy had a gun or some sort of a drug, I think Mauricio would have beat the living shit out of that guy. So very twisted humor, I thought, I wonder if Mauricio should have gotten in that car. But anyway, so that I digress about that. So that was that story. At that time, there were a lot of, there's some weird people, but that was my first encounter with that kind of crazy person. And weird. It never happened again. I think it may have happened one other time years later. I was on my way down to Grossman's to go to work, and some guy came up and did the same thing. But other than that, we never heard about anything like that again. And so that is the stories that I remember about that.